On May 10, 1876, Eli Lilly opened the doors of his very first pharmaceutical laboratory in Indianapolis. In a modest building on Pearl Street, he and his small team began a journey that would one day transform the world of medicine. With unwavering dedication and bold innovation, Lilly crafted high-quality remedies, setting new standards in a time when few dared to dream of better. It was here that the foundation was laid for what would become one of the world's leading pharmaceutical companies. Buenos Aires, 1870. A street sharpener works with his grinding wheel. A common trait at the time, it reflected the daily life of a city blending tradition and modernization on its cobblestone streets. The Chascomús railway station, shown in this 1875 image, was part of the Buenos Aires Great Southern Railway. Local residents and their carriages appear in front of the building, illustrating the central role of the train in connecting the capital with the interior during Argentina's modernization process. Photograph from 1893, taken shortly after a train accident near Lufkin in East Texas. A large group of people can be seen gathered around the wreckage of two steam locomotives. The scene depicts a typical disaster from the era of railroad expansion in the United States, when collisions and derailments were common due to poor infrastructure and the lack of modern signaling systems. In 1877, a soldier of the 8th Infantry Regiment is executed in Prescott, Arizona. The image shows a public hanging, a common practice at the time as a form of military punishment and a means to maintain discipline on the American frontier. Around 1898, at the height of the Klondike Gold Rush, the Magnet Roadhouse in Bonanza, Yukon, served as a place of rest and social gathering for weary prospectors. Such establishments were common along mining routes, offering meals, beds, and entertainment in the heart of the wilderness. In July 1900, 11 reinforced boxes containing $1,100,000 in gold from Nome, Alaska, are unloaded in Seattle. The image symbolizes the wealth generated by the Seward Peninsula Gold Rush, which drew over 25,000 people to the region. In the 1890s, Ute men crossed the Los Pinos River on horseback in Colorado. The image captures an everyday moment of an indigenous group adapted to life on the plains and to the changes brought by the settlement of the American West. In 1875, an Argentine milkman makes his deliveries on horseback through cobblestone streets. Before the dairy industry was industrialized, milk was transported manually each day, connecting rural areas to urban centers. In 1861, at the onset of the American Civil War, members of the Star Rifles, Company D of the 1st Texas Infantry, posed for a photograph in Jefferson, Texas. These local units played a vital role in the Confederate forces. Cowboys managed cattle at the Empire Ranch in Pima County, Arizona, in the 1890s, during a period when ranching expanded to meet the growing demand for beef in American urban centers. In 1893, residents of Sedro-Woolley, Washington, pose on the massive stump of a felled cedar tree, a symbol of the peak of logging in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, which fueled settlement and economic development in the region. Around 1901, Hopi children ride burros in the village of Shongopavi, Arizona, a rare glimpse into the daily life of an indigenous community that at the time lived in relative isolation in the American Southwest. 3 men sit around a smoky campfire while another standing bursts into laughter, a scene captured around 1904 at a rustic campsite near Mineral Creek, Alaska, where fortune seekers tried to keep their spirits up and find some comfort amid the harshness of frontier life. Soldiers pose beside massive mortars. This 1862 photograph, taken during the American Civil War, shows the Union's powerful artillery positioned near Yorktown, Virginia, ready for the siege of the Confederate-held city. These mortars, fired at a high angle, launched explosive shells over enemy fortifications, causing destruction from a distance. Men standing in front of a store in Hubbard, Texas, in 1908. The scene captures a typical moment in the American South, with the simple storefront and the men's clothing reflecting the aesthetics and customs of a small Texan town in the early 20th century. Men chat in front of a butcher shop in Worthington, Ohio. This August 1938 photograph captures the storefront of Chapin Bros, a shop specializing in meats, poultry, and eggs, offering a glimpse into everyday life during the final years of the Great Depression in the United States. Union soldiers stage a wounded rescue during the American Civil War. This 1864 photograph captures a demonstration by a Zouave ambulance crew, illustrating battlefield evacuation procedures at a time when technical limitations required static, posed scenes. In 1896, Doctors and Sisters of Mercy of St. Borromeo care for a patient at Calvarienberg Hospital in Maastricht, Netherlands, reflecting the era's blend of religious service and emerging modern medical practices under the direction of surgeon and photographer Dr. Lambert van Cleef. Interior of the Archaeological Museum in Mexico City in the late 19th century. The photograph reveals monumental sculptures from pre-Hispanic civilizations, such as the Sunstone in the background, at a time when Mexico was seeking to assert its national identity through the valorization of its indigenous past. Photographed in 1877 during the Great Madras Famine under British colonial rule in India, the image shows a family in a state of extreme malnutrition. The man, visibly emaciated, leans on a stick while looking toward the camera, surrounded by a woman and children weakened by hunger, lying on the ground. The scene starkly captures the human suffering caused by colonial neglect during one of the worst famines of the 19th century. A street vendor serves tea or coffee on the streets of Egypt. This 1935 photograph shows a man carrying a metal e-brick, a traditional vessel used by hot beverage sellers in the Middle East, reflecting a customary practice that blended trade with urban mobility. Houston, Texas, 1937. Behind the scenes at the Texas Chemical Company, a worker feeds animal bones from local slaughterhouses into a furnace. Turned into bone char, these remains found new purpose in sugar refining, water treatment, and fertilizer production. A vivid snapshot of how organic waste was already fueling the American chemical industry in the early 20th century. Mérida, Yucatan, Mexico, 1924. After a rainfall, a boy stops his bicycle in the water-covered street. In front of him, a man stands next to a small herd of goats tied with ropes beside a wooden structure. In the background, a cart and some market stalls suggest a commercial setting typical of urban life at the time. Camel handlers with European visitors, Australia, 1891. Men skilled in camel handling pose beside richly adorned animals, likely during a staged photo opportunity. Crew gathered at the stern of the Swedish gunboat Svensksund in the summer of 1901. The vessel was built in 1891. Neapolitan boys in front of a street kitchen show off strands of macaroni, Naples, circa 1875. The casual scene reflects the popular place of pasta in everyday life in southern Italy during the 19th century. Members of the Boston Red Sox baseball team pose in front of a locomotive during spring training in Arizona, March 1911.